seminar is organized within the project, which the Center for Research and Education on the Holocaust, together with the Humboldt University in Berlin, are implementing together during 2017 and 2018. There are several activities within the project. In addition to this seminar and the seminar which will be held in Berlin, probably in late February 2018, we will have two study tours, one tomorrow to Bor and the other will happen in Belgrade, probably in February. Of course, the website and the collection works on the forced labor in Serbia during the Second World War. The project is supported by the EVZ Foundation and is being implemented from June 2017 until March 2018. Today's event is dedicated to certain segments related to forced labor in Serbia. Since this issue is very poorly researched, we decided to set up a team of panelists who will be able to exchange their experiences, their knowledge, and who will be able to contribute with specific topics and the so-called case studies. We did not just focus on historiography, but also on the ongoing projects or museums, which, for example, in Europe have permanent exhibitions dedicated to forced labor. In this way, we wanted to go out of pure historiography and see what is going on the educational level and what we could do here in Serbia in the same way. In this first panel, we have Professor Milan Ristovic from the Belgrade University, who will give us an overview on the situation in Serbia during the Second World War. Zoran Janetovic from the Institute for Contemporary History, that is the Recent History Institute. So this is our first hour today. The Recent History Institute of Serbia, one of the rare people who has dealt with the issue of forced labor in Serbia during the Second World War, and who today will give us an introduction on this, but will focus on the issue of compulsory work in the region of Banat, and Marija Bradovic from the Recent History Institute of Serbia, who will speak about the relationship between collaborationism, that is the Milan Nedic government, and the occupying force, that is the forced labor. I now give floor to Mr. Professor Ristovic.
After the coup in March 27, Hitler, however, saw the political change in Belgrade as evidence of Serbian instability. The happenings of 27 March seemed too much like the assassination in Sarajevo in 1914 that sparked off World War I. He accused the Serbs and the Serbian military officers of provoking both world wars. Even before the First World War, Just to mention, also Hungary had growing feelings of intolerance and hatred toward the Serbs in Serbia. In 1941, those stereotypes were still as powerful as ever. So those in April 1941, Germany started and fought the war against the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, in effect as Hitler declared that as the kind of private war. A few months later, General Böhme, the military commander of Serbia, told of German soldiers playing in 1941 the same role their fathers and grandfathers had in the First World War. That's interesting to make this connection. The German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop described the German attack as a defensive one provoked by the Serbian officers. He claimed that Serbia endangered German interest and those entered in the service of Great Britain. The occupation system in Serbia was very complex. There was on this relatively small territory, there was 5 different occupation systems. But generally speaking, the Yugoslav territories were already being dismembered while military operations were still going on. At first, it seemed that division would be temporary. The Germans were in a hurry, and on 27 March, Hitler himself laid the basic guidelines for dismemberment as it was presented in the general plan for organizing of subsequent government in the Yugoslav region of the 6th April and in the directive of 12th April, so-called temporary directives for division of Yugoslavia. And those documents were implemented at the conference held in Vienna on 21st and 22nd April 1941, where this war plunder was distributed among the Axis allies. The biggest occupied part of the Serbia, so-called the Rump Serbia, had 51,000 square kilometers with 3.8 million inhabitants. And the territory of Banat, which throughout history has frequently been a cause of dispute between Hungary and Romania, was formerly a part of the so-called Serbian Torso. With some between 120, 130,000 members of German minority, the Volksdeutsche, who lived there, and they requested the government of Third Reich to put this territory under direct German control. From the very beginning of the occupation, the Volksdeutsche had claimed all authority to the treatment of the Serbian majority and of many other minority groups, Hungarians, Romanians, Slovaks, and others. On June the 5th, 1941, Banat became an autonomous unit only formally belonged to connected to the Serbia. Same the territory of immediate inroad of Belgrade had an undefined status. At the beginning of the occupation, it was an economic region of interest to the military and administrative commander of Serbia. But independent state of Croatia took over through there in October 1941. And despite this change of status, which severely disadvantaged the Serbian population, representatives of the favored German minority continued to hold powerful influence on the government. So the occupation of Serbia was very complex. There were several different, frequently opposed, also German centers of administration of the part of Serbia under direct German control. The first military administrative commander was Air Force General Helmut Förster, which was a result of Hermann Göring's influence and endeavors to put this economically important area under the direct control of the circle around Hermann Göring. And General von Schroeder replaced first in June 1941, but Schroeder died in the end of the summer, and the new commander became the Air Force General Dankelmann. His failure to end the uprising resulted in his dismissal. Then came the General Behmer in the second half of September 1941. His brutal decisiveness proved to be equal to the task, and he crushed the resistance in Serbia brutally. In late autumn 1941, Behmer left for Finland, and General Paul Bada replaced him. In February 1942, the authority of the Supreme Military Commander was even greater. He became a commanding general of Serbia, responsible to the commander of the German forces for the southeast. And his headquarters staff was eventually to grow to 700 officers. And the Special Command of Headquarters for Peacekeeping in Serbia was formed, and the government advisor, Dr. Harald Turnau, was in charge of military administration. In the first phase of the occupation, his headquarters acted as a state government. Later, he assumed the control of local government. The German Ministry of Foreign Affairs had its own deputy in Belgrade, Felix Benzler. Under the command of military administration, he was in charge of political affairs. When the domestic puppet government started to function, he acted as a kind of German emissary. The very important position was held by plenipotentiary for economy, Franz Neuhausen, who was directly responsible to the head of the four-year plan, Hermann Göring, and the complete Serbian economy was under Neuhausen dictatorial control. On matters of economy, he often clashed with other German economy officials, especially those of the Serbian section of military economy headquarters for the southeast, the German one. So then the German police, the German police chief responsible for law and order in Serbia was from February 1942 a high SS and police officer August Meissner, who answered to the Reichsführer and the chief of German police Heinrich Himmler. And we have the long list of different German intelligence services operated in Belgrade. Other German military and civil services were also active in Serbia, including Organisation Tod for Balkan, Labor Recruitment Agency, representatives of German financial institutions, big banks, industrial concerns, etc. There were 4 Feldkommandanturen in the German-occupied area of Serbia: Belgrade, Smederevo, Niš, and Užice. Each had its own Kreiskommandanturen, Ortskommandanturen, and the network of the martial courts. These military and civilian forces made up a wide-ranging apparatus for control and repression of the domestic population. Serbia was of considerable strategic and economic significance, as the boundaries of the German occupation clearly showed. The Germans also kept for themselves the important sources of raw materials: copper mines in eastern Serbia, the basin of Bor, the lead and zinc mine in Trepča, antimony, magnesite, coal deposits, and so on. Because of its economic importance, the Germans removed from the area of Kosovska Mitrovica with Trepča mine from the Italian zone and claimed it is as German-controlled territory. Serbia and Banat, predominantly agricultural areas, were important food producers. According to to the Serbian sources, 7,400,000 hundreds of kilograms of wheat and 9,900,000 hundreds of kilograms of corn were produced only in 1941. Both the German armed forces and the civilian population in Germany consumed large quantities of meat, milk, alcohol, fruit, and vegetables from these areas. Serbian farmers avoided the false supply of agricultural products by hiding them away and simply by reducing production demands. In contrast, the German minority in Banat tried hard to meet German demands. So the German paid special attention to the economic needs of the Reich, such as the mines and processing plants. For example, they ransomed the mine in Bo under pressure from the French proprietors after the capitulation of France. And German authorities worked hard to make the mine ready for production as it had been damaged in the April War, and then to increase the production of copper. Another large mine, Trepča, formerly a British property, was also in German receivership throughout the war. Just to mention the other occupation territories, on the Pirot and the eastern Kosovo was under direct Bulgarian occupation. Then this territory was annexed, and the Bulgarian simply introduced Bulgarian law system, administrative system, school system, Bulgarian language. They sent the Bulgarian priest and the Bulgarian clerks there, and they expelled the Serbian teachers, Serbian priests, etc. So this territory was actually incorporated in the system of so-called Old Bulgaria, including also the Yugoslav part of Macedonia, the Vardar Macedonia. The other part of territory of Kosovo and Western Macedonia was a part of so-called Greater Albania, the Italian protectorate, and on this territory was introduced a system which was in Albania from the time of Italian occupation of Albania. This situation in Kosovo changed in 1943, from September 1943, when this pro-Italian branch of the occupation and the politicians in the Kosovo and Western Macedonia was also in Albania was, replaced by the politicians, Albanian politicians, which were actually openly pro-German. What concerns this system, it was changes through 1942 and 1943 because of general situation, especially on the Eastern Front, when the German forces actually were removed, the majority of German forces from Serbia to the Eastern Front, and the German authorities simply called the Bulgarian troops to occupy the large part of the Serbia, which was still formerly the part of German occupation system. So 1943, the Bulgarian occupation was some 80 kilometers eastern from Belgrade to Smederevo, and they reached the border between Serbia and Bosnia on the river Drina. What was important for the Serbia, especially in 1941, that was actually this brutal suppression of uprising in Serbia. In summer 1941, the uprising started with these two ideologically different movements, the communist-led one, the so-called National Liberation Movement, and the other under the influence of this royalist royalist officers around Draža Mihailović, which were actually formerly part of the former Yugoslav Royal Army. Mihailović was, from the beginning of 1942, the Minister of War and the Yugoslav government in exile. This mass uprising was mostly concentrated in the central and western part of the Serbia, and endangered the position of the German occupation system, and also this first collaboration system, which was organized from May 1941, so-called the Commissariat. The Commissariat was replaced at the end of August 1941 by so-called the Government of National Salvation, headed by the General Milanidis. And that was the kind of German strategy, to choose someone who have some influence, and to stabilize the system. But very soon, this Nadic Government of National Salvation proved themselves that they were actually very efficient instrument of occupation system. That was also the situation in which we have this phenomena of the Holocaust on the territory of Serbia. We have different occupation system, but we have also very different anti-Semitic, the practices. So we can compare, the harsh, situation was in the territory under the direct German occupation, and we have almost from the first days of German occupation this very harsh German occupation policy toward the Jewish population on the territory of the Serbia. That is the same pattern like in other occupation territories: registration, concentration, and annihilation. And destruction of the Jews on the territory under German occupation, the local collaboration system was the instrument which helped actually registration, organizing rights in the search of Jews who were hidden and so on. But the exclusive right by killing, annihilation was the German one. And one very important specific was actually that the majority of Jews who were killed, as hostages, were actually, they were killed not by the Einsatztruppen or these specialized units like in Eastern Europe, but by the Wehrmacht. So that is something what was very specific for the Serbian case. And the Bulgarian territory was relatively stable until the March 1943, when we have this connection with what was happened with the Jews in Thessaloniki, in Thrace, and also in other parts of Greece, when the Bulgarian authorities in Macedonia, in Pirot, simply, gave those Jews in the hands of the Germans, and a huge majority of the Jews from Macedonia and Pirot were killed, very, very soon and very quickly in concentration camps, death camps in Eastern Europe. On the territory of Srem, which was a part of independent state of Croatia, we have two phenomena. One that is the concentration camp in Sajmište, the Berger de Fer, just on the other side of the river, which was actually under direct German control. And we have on the other territory, it was actually anti-Jewish policy, and anti-Serb policy was a part of the general Ustaša policy on the whole territory of the independent state of Croatia. In Bačka, which was occupied and annexed by the Hungarian troops, we have something what was, we have two different, let's say, phenomena. One that was in winter 1942, in January 1942, the Hungarian troops and police organized a called raid, killing some estimation that was that's maybe more, 4,000 Serbs and Jews in Novi Sad, in the southern part of Bačka. And the second phase was in April, from April 1944, after these changes in Hungary, when actually this last, transports from Bačka were sent to death camps in eastern part of occupied Europe. So we have different situations. We have uprising, but we have also suppressing or uprising with brutality. It was only in 2 or 3 months there was some 30,000 hostages killed in Serbia from November until the January 1942. And we have the beginning of this ideological conflict between the partisans and the Chetniks, which opened actually something what was this internal civil war. So we have occupation, we have collaboration, we have uprising, and we have the civil war. So we have plus very different situation in different parts of occupied Serbia. So it's very small territory, and just to mention, we have also the huge influx of refugees coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Croatia, from the Macedonia, from Kosovo, from Bačka, and it was some 400,000 refugees, according to some researchers, or more, and it was huge pressure on this small territory under the direct German occupation. It's a very complex situation, And we have the periods of relatively, when this territory was relatively pacified with brutality. It was from, let's say, from the beginning 1943 until 1943, when this, especially the partisan units were, you know, put only split it in small groups in the mountains in central part of Serbia or eastern part of Serbia. But the new phase was 1944, when the partisan troops came, you know, from Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Croatia back to Serbia, and that was actually the start of the end of German occupation system and the collaboration system in Serbia. It was actually something what was, today we have this, you know, the Day of Liberation of Belgrade. That was October 1944. The process which lasted, you know, from September, October, and was actually stacked in some 100 kilometers from Belgrade, when this so-called Sremski front, the Serbian front, started to function, which was actually the line between the partisan forces and the Red Army and partisan forces, you know, who fought against the German Ustasha, different white Russian troops, etc. This fighting lasted until the May 1945. So we have very complicated situation when if we are using this word complicated, it's somehow sounds like excuse not to go too deep in details, but it's, you know, to go into details you need more than 20 minutes. But I think more or less we have something what is a general rough sketch of the situation in Serbia during this period from 1941 to 1944. Thank you.